The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. In a quiet suburb of Pennsylvania, nestled between tall oak trees and weathered sidewalks, 42-year-old Daniel Whitmore pulled into his driveway after a long shift at the construction site. His muddy boots dragged through the gravel as he entered his house, greeted not by noise or excitement, but by silence. His wife, Evelyn, always had the TV on or jazz playing softly in the kitchen. But not today. "Evelyn?" he called out, wiping his brow. "In the living room," came the calm reply. Evelyn Whitmore sat with a cup of tea, her short auburn hair pinned back, her emerald eyes staring blankly at the flickering TV screen. Something in her face looked off. Not angry, not upset, just detached. Daniel knew her well enough to sense it, but said nothing. "You okay?" he asked. She looked up slowly and nodded. "I will be." That night, after dinner, Evelyn quietly folded laundry while Daniel took a shower. 20 minutes later, he collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. But outside their home, a black SUV parked down the street. Inside sat 3 men with eyes like sharks, cold, patient, and ready. By morning, Daniel was gone. At first, it looked like he hadn't returned from his usual morning walk. Evelyn called a few friends, then the police. A search began. Flyers were made. But no one could explain the disappearance. There were no witnesses, no footage, no signs of a struggle. The officers asked Evelyn routine questions, but behind her composed demeanor, something had cracked. Grief came, of course, but so did something else. Something sharper. 1 week later, Daniel's body was found in a ravine just outside town. His ID still in his wallet, but his phone destroyed. Official cause of death: blunt force trauma. An unfortunate mugging, they called it. No arrests were made. Evelyn buried her husband in a quiet ceremony attended by only a handful of friends and neighbors. She didn't cry. Not then. Not in public. But inside her mind, a fire had started. Evelyn wasn't like most people. She didn't scream or seek sympathy. Before she married Daniel, she'd worked as a cybersecurity specialist for a private intelligence firm. She had quit after they married, at Daniel's request, promising to leave the dangerous world of hacking and espionage behind. But now, she had a reason to go back. She reopened her old laptop from the attic. It was outdated but encrypted, and still had everything she needed. She pulled out hard drives, reinstalled software, and changed her identity online. She didn't need the police. She needed access. Her first step? Traffic cameras. She hacked into the city's transportation database, working night after night without sleep. She tracked every camera on the roads near her house, the time Daniel vanished, and every suspicious vehicle. Most were dead ends until she found it. License plate: BLK 3725, black Chevy Suburban, parked less than a block away from their house for nearly 2 hours that morning. Unregistered to any legal name. Fake plates. She cross-referenced tire marks from the police report, pulled satellite images from cloud backups, and found the SUV again, 10 minutes from their home, near an abandoned warehouse. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. This wasn't random. Daniel was targeted. But why? She dug deeper, rerouting her searches through multiple VPNs and dark web forums. It took days, but she eventually hit gold. The SUV belonged to a man named Raymond Cutter, a known enforcer for a small criminal syndicate in Philly. Not big enough to hit the news, but dangerous enough to avoid. Raymond had 2 partners, Derek Voss and Leon Martin. All 3 had military backgrounds, and all 3 had been in Evelyn's town the morning Daniel disappeared. But Evelyn couldn't find any reason for them to target her husband, until she remembered something Daniel had told her 2 weeks before his death. "I saw something strange at the site today," he'd said while sipping coffee. "Some guys from another crew, digging where they weren't supposed to. When I asked, they just stared at me and left." Back then, Evelyn had brushed it off. Now, she realized Daniel had seen something he wasn't meant to, something worth killing for. She was going to find out what it was. And then, she was going to make them pay. Not with a gun, not with fists, but with something far more dangerous. Her mind. Evelyn wasn't just planning revenge. She was engineering it layer by layer, like building a virus designed to corrupt from the inside without ever being detected. She knew the men who murdered Daniel, Raymond Cutter, Derek Voss, and Leon Martin, weren't average street thugs. They were smart, methodical, and careful. But Evelyn had worked with people smarter and scarier than them. She just had to be patient. Her first move was digital infiltration. Using spoofed credentials, she hacked into one of the city's construction permit databases. Daniel's final job site was listed under a shell company, one Evelyn traced back to a corporate entity called Blackbridge Logistics, a holding firm with zero online presence and suspicious cash flow. More digging revealed Blackbridge was laundering money through construction projects, moving stolen goods through underground pipeline tunnels built beneath fake sites. And Daniel? He'd seen one of them being dug. That made him a loose end. Evelyn's next step: surveillance. She rented a rundown apartment in the city near where Blackbridge operated. She installed small, motion-sensitive cameras on rooftops, utility poles, and across from their warehouse. She watched them, day and night, what they drove, who they met, when they arrived. She collected patterns, phone numbers, license plates, and even Wi-Fi data from inside the building. She was a ghost, a quiet observer. Meanwhile, she also began constructing new identities online. Under the name Leah Renshaw, she posed as a financial analyst and applied for contract work with a logistics consulting firm linked to Blackbridge. Within days, she was inside. Not in person, digitally. And she found exactly what she needed. Invoices, shipping manifests, transfer logs, proof that Blackbridge was trafficking weapons. Daniel had stumbled onto something massive. Evelyn downloaded everything and stored it on multiple encrypted flash drives. Not for the police. Not yet. She had a better idea. Evelyn knew that if she simply exposed them, they'd vanish and start over somewhere else. These were men who thrived in the shadows. The only way to break them was to turn them against each other. So she began the disinformation phase. She created a fake report using Blackbridge's formatting and language, showing large amounts of money being rerouted without authorization, blaming Derek. She made another suggesting Leon had been secretly feeding information to federal agents. Then she leaked both reports anonymously to Raymond Cutter's burner phone. Within 3 days, Evelyn saw the effect. From her rooftop cameras, she watched as Raymond confronted Derek outside the warehouse. The audio was fuzzy, but the body language was clear. Accusation, denial, anger. The next day, Leon didn't show up. By the end of the week, Derek's car had been torched in the warehouse parking lot. Rumors were spreading inside their circle. Distrust bloomed like mold in a sealed room. But Evelyn wasn't done. She found out Raymond had a hidden stash of untraceable crypto wallets. Millions in stolen funds. Using a fake identity, she lured him into clicking a seemingly harmless link in a spoofed email that looked like it came from his offshore banking service. He took the bait. The link deployed malware that copied access tokens and sent them to Evelyn. She didn't take all his money, just some. Enough to trigger panic. Enough to make him think someone close had betrayed him. And then she left a trail pointing to Leon. Now Raymond was certain. His crew had turned on him. Within a week, Evelyn watched as the 3 killers scattered. Derek fled the city. Leon tried to arrange a meeting with someone connected to a rival gang, likely looking for protection. Raymond went dark. But Evelyn wasn't tracking them to stop them. She was tracking them to trap them. She sent an anonymous tip, disguised as intel from a rival gang, revealing that Leon was carrying sensitive information about Blackbridge's weapons shipments. Then she planted a fake schedule in Raymond's stolen files that made it look like Leon was going to the feds. Raymond took the bait. 2 nights later, Evelyn watched news reports of a double homicide in a motel on the outskirts of the city. Derek and Leon shot execution style. No suspects, no leads. Raymond had silenced them, just like he'd silenced Daniel. But this time, Evelyn wasn't just watching. She was guiding every move. And Raymond? He was next. But not by a bullet. By now, Evelyn had everything she needed. Files, evidence, and most importantly, access. She infiltrated the darknet forums where Raymond conducted most of his business. Using another fake identity, she made contact and posed as a broker interested in purchasing a major weapons shipment. She arranged a meeting at an abandoned railway depot just outside Philadelphia. A perfect spot, public enough for cameras, isolated enough for no escape. But Evelyn didn't show up. The FBI did. Before the operation, she had anonymously sent them a full dossier. Names, locations, bank accounts, transactions, weapons manifests, every detail meticulously documented with timestamps, cross-referenced files, and links to the shell companies. She made sure her name was nowhere in it. When Raymond arrived, expecting a buyer, he was met with helicopters, armed agents, and a very long list of charges. Evelyn watched it unfold on the news. Raymond Cutter arrested and charged with murder, racketeering, and weapons trafficking. The authorities called it a miraculous tip from an insider. No one suspected Evelyn. Not even once. She had dismantled an entire criminal operation without pulling a single trigger. All because they had killed the wrong man and underestimated his wife. The morning after Raymond Cutter's arrest, Evelyn stood at Daniel's grave with a single white rose in her hand. She hadn't visited often, not because she didn't care, but because she hadn't allowed herself to stop moving. Now the silence no longer felt hollow, felt earned. The wind rustled through the trees overhead, and she knelt, placing the rose gently at the base of the stone. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "They'll never hurt anyone again." Daniel had always believed in doing the right thing, even when it came at a cost. He had once told her, "Justice doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be done." She smiled faintly, remembering that moment. She hadn't shouted, hadn't raged, hadn't threatened. She had planned. And now, 3 ruthless men were either dead or behind bars, and no one suspected her involvement. Back in her modest apartment, Evelyn began wiping all traces of her operation. She scrubbed her laptop, shredded fake IDs, and burned notebooks filled with maps, patterns, and digital footprints. Everything had to disappear. She wasn't afraid of getting caught. She was simply done. Her mission was never about revenge. Not entirely. It was about balance. They had destroyed Daniel, stolen a good man from the world. The least she could do was take away the disease that infected it. Evelyn didn't want to be a hero. She just wanted peace. But peace doesn't come quickly when you've lived in shadows. 2 weeks later, the FBI made a public announcement. The Blackbridge Syndicate was officially dismantled. Multiple assets were frozen. Arms deals disrupted. 3 federal cases opened. Raymond Cutter, now in custody, faced a life sentence without parole. The media went wild. News anchors praised anonymous whistleblowers and brave insiders. No one knew it had been the quiet woman who once folded laundry while her husband talked about pipes and permits. But she knew, and that was enough. A few days later, Evelyn received a letter in the mail, no return address. Inside was a plain sheet of paper that read, "Your silence was your loudest scream. He would be proud." She didn't know who sent it. Maybe an old friend from her intelligence days who noticed her digital trail before she erased it. Maybe someone inside the system who recognized her work. But she didn't need to know. All that mattered was that Daniel's death had meaning now. She sat at her kitchen table, tea steaming beside her, and opened her journal. It had been untouched since the week of the funeral. She flipped to the last page and wrote, "Daniel Whitmore, beloved husband, victim of monsters, avenged by a woman they should never have underestimated." She closed the journal, locked it in a drawer, and stood up. It was time to move forward. 3 months later, Evelyn sold the house and left Pennsylvania. She moved to a quiet coastal town in Maine under a new name. No more surveillance, no more hacking. Just sunlight, ocean air, and silence she could finally enjoy. She opened a small tech repair shop. Nothing fancy, just honest work. Her neighbors thought she was a former city consultant who wanted a simpler life. No one questioned her. No one looked twice. That's how she liked it. Sometimes, she thought of Daniel while walking along the beach. His laugh, his kindness, the way he always kissed her forehead before leaving for work. She missed him every second. But the ache had softened into something else. Pride. He hadn't died for nothing. And neither had the part of her that once feared she'd never be strong enough without him. Back in Philadelphia, no one remembered Evelyn Whitmore. The police had closed the case. The town moved on. Raymond Cutter rotted in a maximum security prison. Rumors said he spoke to no one. Paranoid, convinced the system had someone still watching him. Maybe he was right, but Evelyn didn't need to watch anymore. She'd already won. And so, in the end, the story wasn't about a man who was killed. It was about the woman they didn't see coming. The woman they thought was weak. The woman who stayed calm, waited, and turned their empire into ashes. She never raised her voice, never picked up a weapon. She simply used what they never expected. Intelligence, patience, and precision. They killed a man, but they had no idea his wife would be the one to end them. Quietly, completely, and without a single drop of blood on her hands.